This week on the Hollywood in Toto podcast, another significant attack on free speech, this time in Amsterdam, and you probably won't be surprised by the source of the problem. And we talked to comedian Tyler Fischer. He tried to get inside Hollywood the old-fashioned way, but those gatekeepers stood tall, kept him out. His revenge has been sweet and very funny.
Welcome to the Hollywood in Toto podcast. Entertainment news and reviews without the woke Hollywood narrative. Free speech, free expression. Now that's entertainment. And here's your host, award-winning film critic, Christian Toto.
Well, if you talked to me last year, I couldn't have been more depressed about the state of free speech in the country and across the globe. And then November 5th happened, and things look a lot brighter, a lot quicker than I ever imagined. We've got the Biden administration getting the heave-ho in all their censorial ways. That's a really good thing. President Trump initially announced an executive order about banning government agencies from trying to clamp down on social media projects that are, of course, based on free speech. That matters too. Maybe Justine Bateman, the ex-Family Ties star, said it best after November 5th when she said, "I feel like I can breathe again." Yeah, she's not alone. But of course, the fight is not over. I guess in a way, it'll never be over. This is the world we live in. There are good things happening and bad things, and trends that are positive and helpful, and other movements that are, of course, just completely negative, or at least partially so. But the one I want to draw your attention to this week happened in Amsterdam. It's a club called Boom Chicago. And the club in question was going to have a Jewish comedian perform his comedy. Seems pretty innocuous. Pretty sure there are more than a few Jewish comedians who are working the comedy circuit these days. What could go wrong? Well, Yohei Sponder's set got canceled. Now, just for a little bit of context here, the club in question didn't want to cancel him, didn't want to bow to the mob, but a lot of anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish forces were lining up saying we don't want him to perform. I imagine that it wasn't just a polite protest, but something a little bit more aggressive. That's why they shut these things down. The threat of violence is important. And of course, you want to keep people safe. And the club said they just couldn't hold back any longer, that they value free speech. But now there is more to the story here. I recommend you check it out on, just fire up the Google or Bing and read more stories about it, because there are some nuances here, but I don't think any of them make the club look good. And certainly the people trying to shut down free speech, they never look good. But one of the things that's interesting is I believe I saw this as a link on Instapundit. Instapundit's my favorite website and has been forever. It's just a series of links about the latest news from a right-of-center perspective. It is an invaluable resource. It is updated constantly. It is my addiction. It's actually more addictive than Twitter and or X, if you can believe that. Trust me, it is. So that's how I heard about it. And then I started to Google and I started to investigate. I thought, not in the Hollywood Reporter, not on Deadline, not on Variety, not in the Wrap, not on CNN. Where is this story? It seems important to the culture. It's nowhere to be found. And you do see a few Jewish-aligned publications that did cover the story. Good for them. It is important. But this isn't a Jewish story. This is a free speech story. This is about the artistic community. And of course, it's not happening in a vacuum. Last year, actor-turned-comedian Michael Rapaport has been touring the country, and he got canceled one of his gigs because he was pro-Israel and he's Jewish. There's a musician named Mattis Yahoo. I don't know much about him, I have to say, until last year, but he faced similar pressure and also was canceled at least once, if not more. Brett Gelman, who is one of the stars of Stranger Things, he is an actor and an author, and his short story collection, I think he had, if not one, maybe more than one, cancellations, again by the same suspects, again because he happens to be Jewish. That's what's going on in the culture, and our finest institutions in legacy media just don't give a damn. Isn't that something? But you know what? That is 2025 in a nutshell, and to a degree, 2024. Legacy media operations aren't really covering the news. They cover the stories they want to cover, and the rest they cover up with a blanket. It's amazing, and it's also giving rise to people like me, new media performers who are trying to get the word out there about subjects that I think are important. I suspect if you're listening right now, you agree. It's one of the reasons why Megyn Kelly has become an absolute superstar, because she is covering topics that just get ignored elsewhere. It's not an accident. She's smart. She knows what she's doing. Sure, she's right of center, but she's fact based and solid. I can trust her when she says something. And the fact that she's covering these stories and other outlets, the pristine August places like the New York Times are ignoring it, well, that's why people are leaving them in droves. So I guess you could say selfishly, keep it up. Keep ignoring stories like these attacks on free speech. Good for me. I get more clicks and more ratings, more downloads. But you know what? I want more people to hear about this. I don't want a select group of people to understand what's happening in the culture wars. It is important. These things matter. And if more and more of these cancellations happen, there's a snowball effect. It happens again and again. And then we get desensitized to it happening. And that's maybe the worst part of all. So if you didn't hear about the story, maybe start to question the news sources you're reading and think, did I really want to skip this one? Seems important. Free speech, man. It's all the rage. It's coming back strong. But there's still some hits against it, and stand up when we have to. So shame on that club. They should have found a solution. They should have found a plan B or a C. That comedian should have played that club as scheduled. Doesn't matter that he found another venue. This is not a good precedent. And if more of these things happen, well, all the good vibes of 2025 could go away in a hurry. Some artists just ooze with talent. And I know that sounds a little gross, like you need an ointment of some kind. But I mean, people like Martin Short. Martin Short is funny and he dances and he's a physical performer and he could act and he could be a serious, sober artist when he needs to be. And then he could be the wacky Ed Grimes character other times. Just so much talent in one individual. And when I look at Tyler Fischer, I feel a similar way. He's got so much talent. Now, again, no ointment required, but serious actor, comedian, movie actor, stand-up, impressionist, you name it, Tyler Fischer brings it. And he does it so well. And yet, Hollywood has been resisting his charms. Weird, no? Now, as Tyler talks about in our conversation this week, he did try to go the traditional route, to get on late night TV, to be a Saturday Night Live performer. He tried those existing platforms and just didn't get anywhere. He said the wrong things. He joked about the wrong topics, apparently.
Okay, the first dose is really just to loosen up the vein for the second dose, so the NRA can get comfortable from the third shot. After the fourth dose, you feel protected, but aren't. And once all the population has received the fifth dose, restrictions can be relaxed as the sixth stops the spread. However, the seventh dose vigorously disagrees with the sixth, reducing protection and calling for an emergency eighth dose, which is really just a placebo, tricking the ninth and 10th shots.
And as he was shocked to discover, he was a straight white male, and that's a no-no in society at times, at least within the Hollywood community. So he was rebuffed. So rather than go away, change careers, maybe start selling things door to door, he said, you know what, I'm going to make my own trail. I'm going to go on my own path and just see what other organizations or outlets or platforms might have me. Well, turns out plenty wanted to have him. Like the Daily Wire. They cast him in Terror on the Prairie. They also cast him in Lady Ballers. One was a grim, dark performance. One was just really funny. I happened to meet Tyler Fischer on the set of Terror on the Prairie. Very affable fellow. Nice to meet a person with so much talent oozing from him. And I've been tracking him ever since, and he just keeps getting bigger and better. And now he's performing on Fox Nation in an exclusive comedy special called Tyler Fischer, No Pardon Needed. Yes, he does impressions of President Biden, President Trump, Kamala Harris briefly. And it's topical. It's funny. Of course, it's very funny. That's what Tyler brings. It's also got some wisdom packed in there as well. By the way, he's got a great story about Jimmy Kimmel Live that you don't want to miss. And it might make you a little angry, but at the end of the day, as Tyler Fischer's star keeps rising, it's as sweet a revenge story as you can possibly imagine. Here's my chat with the great Tyler Fischer. And by the way, I make no apologies for laughing a lot during this conversation. You will too. And he made me do it. Tyler, thanks for joining the show. I want to start with, I just have a sense that you're going to miss Joe Biden just a little bit. Is that fair to say as a comic performer?
I am going to miss him, but he's been dead for a couple of years now, Christian. So I've been mourning him since he took his oath of office.
That's pretty fair. On a slightly more serious note, I think if you look at the work you do, the career you're building right now, it really is a great example of working in a sense outside the mainstream and having great success at the same time.
Look, you gotta speak up. I'm just gonna do the whole thing like him. It's not a joke. Look, it's
He's
great.
back.
It's great to talk to Tom Cruise's brother. I love him. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
That's right. I'm just saying, you don't pop up on the Tonight Show. You're not in standard Hollywood, yet you've built this career. You're in movies. You're doing a national tour right now. Talk a little bit about sort of, in a way, zigging when everyone else is zagging, because I think you're a great example of how you could be successful in that fashion.
Yeah, you've been supporting me since the beginning, which I appreciate. I attribute most of my success to your interviews.
Pretty much.
And so I'll send you a check. I think when the attacks are fine. When people come at you, it just means you're doing something. Look no further than Trump. But if those people listened to me, I would basically say whatever I'm doing now is just a reaction to being told quite explicitly, we don't want you because of the things you say. You can't joke about this. I've definitely tried to get on the Tonight Show, Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, all those people. Jimmy Kimmel's booker said I can't do impressions in my stand-up on his show because Jimmy's friends with the celebrities and he might get upset. That's actually what she said. And so once you started adding these things up, I just was like, I'm not really welcome there, which is fine. They're welcome to book who they want and do what they want. So, but that's how I ended up doing movies with the Daily Wire and working with Fox Nation. It wasn't by choice, and I'm thrilled that they took me on. But the people that say, "Oh, you're going to these more right-wing places and this and that," I did a good 10 years of trying to get through the classic methods of making it as a comedian and as an actor.
Interesting. And of course, you're having literally the last laugh as we speak. Your new special, No Pardon Needed, is very topical, very of the moment. But I think there's some wisdom in the comedy that I noticed as well. Does that flow from the jokes and the material? Is it something you wanted to share? Because it wasn't just laughs, and it obviously is very funny, but I don't know. I just felt like you had something to share about it as well. I mean, about the culture, about what's going on in society. Is that purposeful?
I think again, it's just a reaction. My stand-up has evolved a lot as any art or any profession. You evolve. You move into a new position, a new way of thinking, and so I think the cancellations and I didn't get the COVID shot, couldn't do stand-up for 2 years, so I was just home, ruminating in my own crazy thoughts. I'm in now a 3-year lawsuit for being turned away because I'm a white guy from an acting agent. And that was sort of my last attempt at getting an acting agent. So I think that stuff took a toll on my spirit and my style of comedy, which is fine. But I think it slowed me down and it allowed me to maybe put a little bit more of my actual emotion into the performance.
That's so interesting. Yeah, it definitely comes through. It makes the material richer, honestly. When I think about anyone doing a Trump joke, it feels, everything's been said, everything's been done. And you're one of the few performers, your Trump impression is top notch, but you find something funny about that. I'm curious, do you get a little negative feedback when you rib him? Because you rib him pretty hard in the new special. I thought it was, on target, funny, appropriate. But I know some Trump fans could have a little thin skin sometimes. Do you get a little blowback, or they get the sense that it's not cruel or mean spirited?
No, what I find is that the people that like Trump, they want to hear his voice, and so even if I'm making fun of him, which of course there's plenty to make fun of, sure. And even though I'm thrilled he's in office, I'm not, as a challenge to myself. I have to keep making fun of him. So no, I don't like to look at a crowd and say, is this crowd politically right or politically left? I think that's a really bad path to go down. But I have noticed that because I perform across the country, I live in New York and Texas, so I get to gauge the crowd. And what I
Yeah.
find is the people that are on the right typically will laugh when I make fun of Trump, and the people that are more on the left give a little more pushback when I make fun of Kamala and Biden.
Hmm.
But I did notice that slowly shift as Biden was going against a lot of his promises and not really delivering what he said he would. People
Yeah.
started to enjoy those jokes a little more, which I thought was interesting. I saw that slowly evolve over 4 years.
Interesting. Yeah.
Mm.
You mentioned I think this is a fairly recent thing where you're in New York, in Austin, sort of that's your dual kind of situation right now. I imagine there's a pragmatic side to it. Austin is exploding as a comedy venue. New York has always been great in that
Mm.
fashion. Talk a little bit about that. And I mean, it's a great way to look at two different cultures, but what else are you observing about this new part of your life?
Yeah, I left New York, or at least part time, because the political party was really destroying the city. It's an
Mhm.
incredible city, but it became dangerous. I was robbed by a homeless guy. He put my phone down his pants. I mean, that'll scar you for, like, just push me in the subway tracks at that point. I'd rather just um, I went into a comedy club kitchen at 2 a.m. and boiled my phone in hot water.
Oh my
That was
gosh.
the moment I said, what's going on in Texas? So, yeah, I left because of the political culture and the
Mhm.
woke culture. I was getting a lot of attacks for my comedy after shows, and it was 1% of the crowd, but
Mhm.
I was getting chased down by packs of feminist women. I mean, it sounds like an exaggeration, but every night
Mhm.
something would happen, and I was doing Joe Rogan's club here and there, and it just felt more of a celebration of comedy in Texas. And
Yeah.
so I like to have both, because when you're on stage and you're getting pushback, it almost turns into a debate where you have to really articulate your points, and the joke might not land, so you actually have to keep going, and it helps you develop a joke in a way stronger. Uh, in a well, I'm turning into Jordan Peterson now. Well, trying to find my words here, but it helps you strengthen the joke. And so
Mhm.
I found that if I went back to New York and worked on the material, then brought it to Austin as a sort of a celebration of the material, I was getting better.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think in a way that applies to politicians when satirists like yourself hold their feet to the fire, they have to up their game. They can't just go about their business. They're being watched in a way and being
Mhm.
mocked and ridiculed, and then maybe they won't do what they did in the past. I mentioned recently Senator Ted Cruz when he went to Cancun during that freeze in Texas. He's not going to do that again because
Yeah.
he got just roasted on Saturday Night Live and elsewhere. And I'm looking around at a lot of the mainstream comedians right now, late night and Saturday Night Live, and they're not really talking about Karen Bass, Gavin Newsom, the horrible tragedy with the wildfires. What are
Mhm.
your thoughts on that? I mean, I feel like maybe it sounds overheated, but it feels like a dereliction of duty to me. And you're a comedian. What's your take on that? Is that fair to say? Am I being hyperbolic?
No, I think you're right. I think that the Hollywood is wrapped up in leftist politics, and so you're gonna be rubbing shoulders with people like that. Seeing Bill Burr on Jimmy Kimmel go, they did a great job, Christian. No, they did a great job burning down half the city. I think it was a great job. And I love Bill Burr, and I thought his jokes were actually funny. I defended his jokes,
Mhm.
but he did go after people on the internet who said we could have prevented this by not defunding the fire department, by not putting DEI first, and you see that was a shift for Bill, supporting the elitist woke politicians instead of the everyman, and he got lucky because the wind missed his house. So you wonder how he would have reacted if he lost his house.
Yeah.
But I think that's why what I'm doing is fun, and there's such a demand for it because their voices have been taken away.
Yeah. Justine Bateman now famously said she felt like she could breathe again after November 5th. Do you have any sense, and you've been in the storm of this woke movement, I mean, people literally chasing you. Do you have a cultural sense that things are expanding, that it's more breathable, for lack of a better phrase, or is that kind of a cultural shift that takes a while to take place?
No, I definitely think Trump winning was a
Mhm.
mandate that the country wanted to change, and he's pretty clear on the things he wants to change. And there definitely is a cultural shift. I see it even with stand up.
Mm.
I would attribute the comedians throwing themselves into the fire and getting people to laugh at this stuff sort of paved the way
Mhm.
for comedians to now go on stage and joke about pronoun. I even see some of the most feminist woke people going, yeah, enough with the pronouns, enough with this and that, and
Mhm.
that's fine. There,
Yeah.
it to me, I'm just happy to see it. But absolutely, I mean, I went from losing my acting representation and being denied further representation because there's too many white guys. That's literally what they said. They said our company policy is now stop hiring white men. As you know, I recorded that call, and it's in the lawsuit. But
Yeah, I heard that, by the way, for those listening. I actually, you played me a recording of that. It's the
yep,
real
yep.
deal.
So I went from that to some of the biggest acting agents and managers now reaching out and saying, "Hey, we think white guys are going to be welcome back soon, so we want to
Mm.
sign you." And I tell them to screw off because it's that's almost more shocking to me than being denied
Yeah.
because I'm white. People going, "We think white people are going to be allowed back because Shane Gillis is doing well," and
Yeah.
I'm pretty scarred from what happened to me, so I'm not going to be working with any Hollywood agents or managers anytime soon.
Yeah, and you were doing such fine. I mean, you were hysterical in Lady Ballers. Do you have any other project at the moment with the Daily Wire or things like that, or is it maybe too soon to share?
I don't. I'm starting my national tour again in 2 weeks, and so
Uh,
that'll be pretty nonstop
yeah.
for probably a year. Because I have a lot of lost time to make up for. I probably could have been touring 5 years ago, 8 years ago, but
Mhm.
just couldn't get that agent, and so I feel like I really owe it to the people of America to go and visit each town and city and
Mhm.
entertain them. So there's that, and then I'd like to start making my own movies. So that's
Excellent.
probably my next. I want to make movies like they used to be.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And it's funny. I just saw a news item about David Spade was teaming up with Theo Vaughn, and it sounds like they're co-writing it and self-financing it, which I think is interesting. Do you see that as maybe sort of a way to kind of keep your independence and yet still get content out there at a time where you can make a pretty good-looking film for a really small budget? I mean, it could be done.
Oh yeah, yeah. Especially Theo's doing great. David
Mhm.
Spade, I'm sure, has plenty of residuals from all the movies he did. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's no reason if you have the money or you have people that can fund it. There's no reason to not do it. So
Mhm.
I'll explore, maybe fan funding or a GoFundMe or working with
Mhm.
a streaming service that's willing to let me kind of do my thing.
Yeah.
But I'd love to get back to that Woody Allen model of
Mhm.
just doing a different film once a year and somebody trusting you to go out and do it.
Yeah, that would be
And I'm
great to
already
see.
sleeping with my girlfriend's Asian daughter, so I sort of
Way to take
started
care.
backwards, but I think it's going to be a really great film, Christian.
Listen, it's a playbook. You don't
Yeah,
define a playbook for
yeah.
sure. When you look ahead to 2025 and beyond, as a new administration, Trump is back, a whole new cast of characters. Do you look at the new lineup and think, okay, there's a lot of material I could work with there? Obviously, Elon Musk is going to be a huge player. What do you kind of give us a preview of what maybe satirical targets you're looking forward to poking fun of, or just what the immediate political landscape is for you?
Yeah, it's a much richer landscape for jokes because
Mhm.
these people that Trump has brought in are uninhibited. They're
Mhm.
very free spirited, you know, they're not self-conscious. They're not worried about what they're going to say or do. Even this whole, you know, Elon saying, you know, putting his heart out there turned into a Nazi salute to the left. RFK Jr., you know, who's, you know, going to start making French fries fried in tallow, and Ozempic will be illegal, but you'll lose weight from eating the fries, damn it. So there's just such a rich cast of characters, and I'm sure Trump will be bringing people in
Yeah.
as he moves along for, you know, to advise him.
I may have asked you at one point that I'm always so fascinated by impressionists with the skill level you bring to the game. When there's a new person on the scene, someone emerges and you want to kind of, you know, grab them, imitate them, capture them. I know your physicality is so on point, but is there a process that you go through listening to hours of audio, or what's that process like for you if there's sort of a new impression you want to add to your repertoire?
Yeah, sometimes I actually will just work on one or two words that they do, or hand motions, or it might just be the way they move their head or something. So if you can nail a couple physicalities with a couple words
Mm-hmm.
and a couple to, obviously RFK, you know, has an issue with his throat, so you have to sort of try to recreate whatever's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fun to see how people react to different voices. Some people, a lot of people, some even on the right will say it's cruel
Mm-hmm.
to do an impression of RFK, but to me, I'm just doing an accurate depiction of his voice. So it's always fun to see what people deem acceptable or not.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Well, I mean, I think if the impression were zeroing in on his voice in a way that was cruel, I could understand maybe that argument. But you're just really using that as a platform to kind of talk about what he says and poke fun at that or bring it to the fore.
yeah, and think about if he became president and
Mm.
people saying, "Oh, SNL can't do." You know, there's not going to be a presidential impression because we're not going to make fun of his voice. That's insane, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. You know, when you look ahead, you mentioned the movies you may make. I mean, get a little specific there. Are there things you have on your plate that you'd like to tackle? Subjects? Would it be political? Would it be more absurdist, or all of the above? I'm kind of curious what's in. I'm so starved for a comedy that's going to make me laugh, and I can watch
Yeah.
with my boys.
Yeah. That would be first, probably. I have a lot of, you know, more maybe darker comedic ideas that I would love to do. And even some biopics of people I love. George Carlin, I'd love to play him. Woody Allen, I'd love to play Robin Williams, you know. Yeah. But to start, I think the country needs a cleansing of just laughing. So
Yeah.
It seems like the right time to do it. So I think if I can write something over this next year while I'm touring and just get right into it, as soon as I wrap the tour, then hopefully could have something out in a year or so.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And what's been the best part of going back on the road? I mean, for you, it's obviously the feedback from the audience. You've been hampered for years for a lot of different complications. What is there a singular joy for you being out on the road, or is it just the traditional? What I'm sharing is getting a reaction. What's it like for you?
Yeah, you could feel it in the room how desperately people want to and need to laugh at stuff. So I'm sure that's always been fun throughout history, but especially now, I'm in a room of people who, similar to me, have been censored, have had their social media removed. So there's a feeling of isolation when that happens, and then to suddenly have, you know, 2, 3, 4, 500 people in a room who don't get triggered by jokes and let me screw up, and you know, I try a lot of new stuff, so it's not all smooth sailing. Some of the shows are very challenging because I want to keep them entertained, but yeah, it's really fun to have everybody just laughing about all the absurdities of the last few years.
Gotcha. One last question. Obviously, Joe Rogan has really changed the game with the Comedy Mothership. You've been there, the specials tape from there. How I have not been to Austin yet. I'm dying to go. I want to kind of soak it in for myself. But how would you describe just the town from a comedic point of view? Either the vibe, the talent, the audience. What are you learning from that whole that shift. I mean, again, we always talked about New York and LA as the comedy. Those are the points. You have to go there if you want to succeed. And now it's a game changer. So what's it like?
Well, it is middle. It's in the middle of America. It is a city, but it's a smaller city, and it's more of a politically, culturally purple city,
Uh-huh.
and so it felt like the missing piece for comedians to thrive and grow a following and really experiment. So that's the big difference between LA and New York is some of the stuff that you say in Austin when you're trying material, you can really push the limits.
Yeah.
And if it's not funny, they don't laugh, but you can feel a freedom, I think, on stage
Mhm.
a little bit more in Austin that New York and LA doesn't offer.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's great because you can get really messy and people aren't booing you and trying to get you canceled. They're just, they're giving you a shot to get your
Yeah.
point across.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, what I saw in No Pardon Needed didn't seem like any experimentation. It seemed like it was just on target all the time. It's a great special. You can check it out now. It's at Fox Nation exclusively. Again, it's Tyler Fischer, No Pardon Needed. Or you could check out tylerfischer.com. The last name is Fischer. On tour right now, coming to a city near you. I've seen him live here in Denver. Love your stuff, Tyler. And
Thanks,
the
buddy.
world is your oyster. And I'm just so glad you've battled through all the things you've battled through because you've emerged stronger, funnier, and we're all the better for it. Thanks again.
Thanks, buddy. Oh, and code Nation 30-day. People get a 30-day trial of Fox Nation.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We'll talk
Thanks,
soon.
buddy. Cheers.
Well, the Oscar nominations are here at last. They were delayed a time or two due to the wildfires, understandably so. And it turns out The Apprentice got two pretty significant nominations. Best Actor for Sebastian Stan, Best Supporting Actor for Jeremy Strong. Who do they play? Well, Donald Trump and Roy Cohn, his infamous lawyer.
And that was all thanks to Roy Cohn.
Now, Oscars can be very political. The voting can be that way as well. Certainly the industry is very to the left, but I have to defend these two nominations because both performers were outstanding. Jeremy Strong, in particular, was sort of a prototypical Academy Award nominee. I mean, his performance of Roy Cohn was mesmerizing. It was clinical in its evil attitude. Listen, I don't think there are many Roy Cohn fans out there, and maybe they played it too hard in that arena. But boy, it's a really mesmerizing performance and certainly worthy of Oscar nomination status. Don't know if he'll win, but he could. And I have no problem with that as well. And Sebastian Stan, I thought, was excellent as Donald Trump, the younger Trump, the 80s Trump. And what really scored with me was it wasn't a caricature. It wasn't like a Tyler Fischer, as good as he is. He's doing a comic performance of Donald Trump. This is not that. It's more modulated. It's more inward. It's sort of burying some of his usual tics. I mean, he wasn't the Donald Trump we know today, for better or worse. So good performances all around. And I do hope that the voters, as they move forward and as the award season marches on, keep that in mind. It should be about the quality of the films, the measure of the performances, the artistic prowess on display, and not, hey, we need to send a message. Let's go nominate or let's make sure that movie X or actor Y gets those big honors. I don't want to see that happen. I don't think anyone else wants to see that happen. But that will come into question. There are certain films like Emilia Perez that has a significant trans theme that some people may find, oh, they nominated it for that reason and that reason only, to send a message, to fight for truth and justice. Well, if the movie's good, it deserves the honors, and if it's not, it doesn't. And they haven't always done that. And I think it's one of the many reasons why the Oscars just don't have the cultural clout that they once did. So I'll be checking this out at HollywoodInToto.com. I'll be, watching the Oscar race, hearing the speeches, and checking out all the infighting that we'll probably see as these different movies and studios jockey for the big awards. But just know that Conan O'Brien, who is this year's host, taking over for Jimmy Kimmel, I like Conan O'Brien, but he's got his work cut out for him. One of the toughest gigs in Hollywood. And again, if he's going to be pushed into the political arena, it might chase even more people away. Coming up in March, the Oscars. Will you be watching? I don't know. I know I have to, but I'm not looking forward to it. Well, it's it for the show this week. Of course, thank you to Radio America for having me as part of their great podcast lineup. And if you get a chance, if you're enjoying the show, if you're intrigued by it, if you want to tell a friend, well, yeah, you can do that. Just share us on social media. Give us a like or a subscribe on Rumble or YouTube. Share it with a friend. Tell everyone. Spread the word. Defeat those nasty algorithms. Thank you for listening. We'll be talking to Chrissy Mayer very soon. They're a very funny comedian and someone who is a free speech warrior, and she takes the slings and arrows for it. So look forward to that coming very soon. Until then, have a spectacular week. That's an order.